In general, the person is living in the illusion that he is all right. So because of that, the person, the buddhi doesn't function in a first person setting. So therefore, Narada Muni is very expert. He is going to bring out the problems of Maharaj Prachin Parishad from a third person context. And Prabhupada is explaining how materialistic people, they want to hear about materialistic activities. So that's why people watch movies, you know. That's why people watch movies, because materialistic people like to hear about materialistic activities. So by this genius of Srila Narada Muni, Prachina Parishad Maharaj is going to very attentively hear. He's going to be super attentive in his hearing, and he will understand all the fallacies in Puranjana. You know, rather he will only come out, okay, this is the problem in Puranjana, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, you know. And actually, this is what happened. As the chapters will flow, Prachina Parishad Maharaj is so attentively hearing, and he's analyzing the case study. He is understanding everything. What is the problem with Puranjana? Oh, what terrible, you know, misfortune. Oh. After 5-6 chapters, after 5-6 chapters, his tube light is going to switch on. You know, and then he's going to realize that, oh, this is my own story. Haribo. This is Narad Muni's genius of how he is teaching, is it not? And because of this sensitivity and genius of Srila Narada Muni and his concern that Prachina Parishad Maharaj should resurrect himself, actually Prachina Parishad Maharaj gets transformed, and he takes on, he gives up his nonsensical ways and takes up to genuine Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada explains here so therefore here Srila Prabhupada is explaining that Puranjana is a history, because the living entity is very old, and therefore the living entity is expert in enjoying this body. So Narada Muni is presenting the conclusion, now he is presenting the substantiation of it. The conclusion was, okay, animal sacrifices are dangerous. Basically, Narada Prabhupada is generalizing that karma kandi is dangerous actually. You see? That means maintaining fruitive desires along with the practice of bhakti is dangerous. That's what it means. Maintaining and feeding and maintaining and relishing, cherishing material desires along with the practice of bhakti is very risky and dangerous. That's the conclusion. Prabhupada is generalizing it. Prabhupada is explicitly pointing it out here. So that's why Prabhupada is saying that, therefore, eating, sleeping, wearing, defending is a dangerous profile. Eating, sleeping, wearing, defending is a dangerous profile. It's very risky because one stands a good chance to become more and more entangled. And then Prabhupada is mentioning, therefore, the story of Puranjana is mentioned. And this is an evolutionary story, how the person evolves, not the body, but the consciousness. And that's what is going to be explained by Srila Narad Muni now. Yes, that's true. So it's very dangerous to maintain material desires along with the practice of bhakti. Very risky. Okay, let's read the next verse. Asita Puranjano Nama Raja Rajan Brihakshrava Tasya Vijanata Namasi Sakha Vignata Cheshtitaha. My dear king, once in the past lived a king named Puranjana who was celebrated for his great sacrifices. He had a friend named Avigyata, the unknown one. No one could understand the activities of Avigyata. Every living entity is Puranjana. The word Puram means within the body, within this form. Jana means living entity. Thus, everyone is Puranjana. Every living entity is supposed to be the king of his body because the living entity is given full freedom to use his body as he likes. Yeah, the living entity is given full freedom to use his body as he likes. Yeah. So every living entity is the king of the body. He usually engages his body for sense gratification because one who is in the bodily conception of life feels that the ultimate goal of life is to serve the senses. This is the process of karma kanda. One who has no inner knowledge, who does not know that he is actually the spirit soul living within the body, who is simply enamored by the dictation of the senses, is called a materialist. A materialistic person interested in sense gratification can be called a Puranjana because such a materialistic person utilizes his senses according to his whims. He may be also he may also be called a king. An irresponsible king takes a royal position to be his personal property and misuses his treasury for sense gratification. The word Brihak Shravaha is also significant. The word Shravaha means fame. The living entity is famous from ancient times. For as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:20, Na jayate mriyate va. The living entity is never born and never dies. Because he is eternal, his activities are eternal, although they are performed in different types of bodies. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. He does not die even after the annihilation of the body. Thus, the living entity transmigrates from one body to another and performs various activities. In each body, the living entity performs so many acts. Sometimes he becomes a great hero, just like Hiranyakashipu or Kamsa, or in the modern age, Napoleon or Hitler. The activities of such men are certainly very great, but as soon as their bodies are finished, everything else is finished. Then they remain in name only. Therefore, a living entity may be called Brihat Shravaha. He may have a great reputation for various types of activities. Nonetheless, he has a friend whom he does not know. Materialistic persons do not understand that God is present as a super soul who is situated within the heart of every living entity. Although the Paramatma sits beside the Jivatma as a friend, the Jivatma or the living entity does not know it. Consequently, he is described as Avigyat Saka, meaning one who has an unknown friend. The word Avigyata Cheshtitaha is also significant because the living entity works hard under the direction of Paramatma and is carried away by the laws of material nature. Nonetheless, he thinks himself independent of God and independent of the stringent laws of material nature. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:24 Achetyoyam adayoyam akledyo shoshya evacha nitya sarvagata stanur achaloyam sanatana. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can neither be burnt nor dried. He is everlasting, all pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. The living entity is Sanatana, eternal, because he cannot be killed by any weapon, burnt into ashes by fire, soaked or moistened by water, nor dried up by the air. He is considered to be immune to material reactions. Although he is changing bodies, he is not affected by material conditions. He is placed under material conditions and he acts according to the directions of his friend, the Supersoul. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hidhi sannivishto mattasmitir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, the Lord as Paramatma is situated in everyone's heart, and He gives direction to the living entity to act in whatever way the living entity desires. In this life and in his previous lives, the living entity does not know that the Lord is giving him a chance to fulfill all kinds of desires. No one can fulfill any desire without the sanction of the Lord. All the facilities given by the Lord are unknown to the conditioned soul. Srila Prabhupada is explaining here how the analogy of the comparing Puranjana to the king is very apt. Actually, every living entity is Puranjana, and because he has the freedom to utilize his body according to his own whims and fancies, he's a king. So he's the king of his body. Yes, that is true. That this kingship is a false kingship, actually. Why? Because it is actually the Supreme Lord who is facilitating the living entity. So, so it's just like Prabhupada explains about the example of a tenant. So the living entity is a tenant. So he can do, but whatever he is allowed to do. Like a tenant can stay in a compartment. So he has the freedom to do the interior decoration whatever way he likes. Wherever he wants, he can put his bed. Wherever he wants, he can put his table, sofa, fridge. So because that freedom is sanctioned by the owner, the landlord. But he cannot say, for example, a tenant. Now, if he is told, okay, you can put nails on the wall, he can. But some landlords don't allow to put nails. Then you cannot even put a nail inside the wall. So, because he's not allowed that freedom. So that is the meaning of tenant. Say, for example, he cannot paint the interior of the home, any way he likes, or he cannot make some drawing on the walls. He may not be allowed to do that. Huh? He cannot do construction, and modify temporary things. Fine, but the basic structure should remain as it is. So this is tenant. So our kingship is like tenancy. Actually, Prabhupada explained that our kingship is like tenancy. So it is in fact false kingship, or it is facilitated kingship. Whatever the Lord is, or the landlord is facilitating, the Lord is facilitating the living entity. And that's why Prabhupada is quoting that actually it is the Supreme Lord who is supplying. And the Supreme Lord is seated in the heart. Sarvasya jaham hridhi sannivishta matasmitir jnanam apurana. And the Lord is supplying. Sometimes He gives remembrance, He gives forgetfulness, He gives inspiration, He gives memory, and so on. It's the Lord who will supply. So that is why this unknown friend, that is Paramatma, is called as Avigyat. So the Puranjana is so obsessed about the idea of enjoyment, he's not realizing that who is the person who is facilitating that enjoyment. No. And if the Puranjana, the living entity, is able to see who is the person who is actually facilitating the enjoyment, then he can see the person who is facilitating the enjoyment is not doing it out of great joy and happiness, is doing it out of, unwillingly he's doing it. So what is his will? What does he really want to give? If unwillingly he's giving material facilities, willingly he'll give something much better. And so that is the point. That the living entity, obsessed and engrossed into material attachments, is not able to see the hand of the Supreme Lord facilitating him in his own material enjoyment. And therefore, the unknown friend is Puranjana. The unknown friend is called as Avigyat. Sorry. Let's read further. Yes, that is true. That is true. That part of analogy is true. So Paramatma is a controller. So just like a tenant create disturbance, so the tenant can be kicked out. Similarly, the living entity create disturbance, he can be kicked out of the body. Yes. The material. Yeah, that's why the original owner is a controller, and we are the living entity is a facilitated controller. He can only do and he should only do what he is allowed to do. If he does what is not allowed, the tenancy agreement stands violated. So and therefore the tenant has to quit. Similarly, punishments can be incriminated upon the person who is disobeying the laws of the Lord, who is the actual controller. But the Lord very much acts in the favor of the living entity. That's the point. That's why he's called as an unknown friend. So anve samanah sharanam Bhabrama Pritavim Prabhu Nanu rupam yada vindan abahutsa vimaniva. King Puranjana began to search for a suitable place to live, and thus he traveled all over the world. Even after a great deal of traveling, he could not find a place just to his liking. Finally, he became morose and disappointed. The the travelings of Puranjana are similar to the travelings of modern hippies. Generally, hippies are sons of great fathers and great families. It is not that they are always poor, but somehow or the other they abandon the shelter of their rich fathers and travel all over the world. As stated in this verse, the living entity wants to become a Prabhu or master. The word Prabhu means master. But actually, the living entity is not a master, he is the eternal servant of God. When the living entity abandons the shelter of God, Krishna, and tries to become a Prabhu independently, he travels all over the creation. There are 84 lakh species of life and millions and trillions of planets within the creation. The living entity wanders throughout these various types of bodies and throughout different planets. And thus he is like King Puranjana, who traveled all over the world looking for a suitable place to live. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishera Bhanda. The path of Karma Kanda, fruitive activities, and the path of Jnana Kanda, speculation, are just like strong pots of poison. Amrita baliya yeva khaye, nanayoni sada fire. A person who mistakes this poison to be nectar and drinks it travels in different species of life. Kadarya bhakshana kare, and according to his body, he eats all types of abominable things. For instance, when the living entity is in the body of a hog, he eats stool. When the living entity is in the body of a crow, he eats all kinds of refuse, even pus and mucus, and enjoys it. Thus, Narottam Das Thakur points out that the living entity travels in different types of bodies and eats all kinds of abominable things. When he does not become ultimately happy, he becomes morose or takes to the ways of hippies. Thus, in this verse, it is said, Na anurupam, that the king could not find a place suitable for his purposes. This is because in any form of life or in any planet in the material world, a living entity cannot be happy because everything in the material world is unsuitable for the spirit soul. As stated in this verse, the living entity independently wants to become a Prabhu. But as soon as he gives up this idea and becomes a servant of God, Krishna, his happiness immediately begins. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Miche Maya Ravashe Yacha Beshe Kachaha Bodhu Bhai. My dear living entity, why are you being carried away by the waves of Maya? As stated in Bhagavad Gita 18.61. ईश्वर सर्वभूतानां हृद्देशे अर्जुन तिष्ठति भ्रामयं सर्वभूतानि यन्त्रारूढानि मायया. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The living entity is carried in the machine of the body through so many species of life on so many planets. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur asks a living entity why he is being carried away in these bodily machines to be placed in so many different circumstances. He advises that one surmount the waves of Maya by surrendering unto Krishna. Jiva Krishna Das, Ei Vishwas, Karle tu ara dukkhanai. As soon as we confront Krishna, Krishna advises, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma shuchah. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all the sinful reaction. Do not fear. Thus, we are immediately relieved from traveling from one body to another and from one planet to another. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Brahmanda Brahmite Kono Bhagyavanachi. If while traveling, a living entity becomes fortunate enough to be blessed by the association of devotees and to come to Krishna consciousness, his real life actually begins. This Krishna consciousness movement is giving all wandering living entities a chance to take shelter of Krishna and thus become happy. In this verse, the words Vimana Iva are very significant. In this material world, even the great King of Heaven is also full of anxiety. If even Lord Brahma is full of anxiety, what of these ordinary living entities who are working within this material, within this planet? Bhagavad Gita 8:16 confirms. Brahma bhuvana loka punar avritino arjuna. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. In the material world, the living entity is never satisfied. Even in the position of Brahma or in the position of Indra or Chandra, one is full of anxiety because he has accepted this material world as a place of happiness. This is very interesting. Srila Prabhupada is comparing the wanderings of the Puranjana, the living entity, to the wanderings of hippies. So, like a hippie, one is traveling here and there. And now, following the philosophy, the grass on the other side is greener. So, but nowhere one goes. What to speak of going and settling in different countries, even in different planets. Srila Prabhupada is explaining that even in Brahmaloka, one cannot be free from anxiety. There is no happiness everywhere, anywhere. There is no happiness anywhere. So, there is no happiness anywhere, and therefore, when Prabhupada is quoting that, okay, Hirdesha Arjuna Tishtati, Brahmanam Sarvabhutana. So the Lord is directing the wanderings. But if the living entity turns to the Lord, and the Lord is ready to give all instruction, therefore Prabhupada is quoting, then if the living entity does, what should I do? Immediately the Lord is telling, Sarva Dharman Pratyacha. That you just surrender unto me. But no, only by that, uh,